If taking breaks were as easy as just putting it in your calendar, then we'd all be taking a lot more breaks, am I right? Hey, I'm Mia Hemstad. I'm a wife, I'm a mom of 2 kids, and I'm a trauma-informed self-care coach. I also live with diagnosed PTSD and depression. I started sharing my mental wellness journey online in 2017 when I was diagnosed with postpartum depression and anxiety. And since then, I've heard from hundreds of women who all struggle with the same thing, putting ourselves last. This is a struggle that's keeping so many women burned out and unhappy, through no fault of our own, by the way. I've been working on my own healing as an abuse survivor since 2013. But when I became a mom, I really started to do the inner work of figuring out why I was putting myself last and how to start prioritizing myself for the first time in my life. This podcast is about sharing all of those lessons with you. So if you're interested in hearing honest stories, life advice, and inspiration that encourages you to make your health, happiness, and well-being a priority, then definitely stick around. Welcome to your No Longer Last journey. Hey everybody, welcome back. I am excited to be here with you today. You might have noticed, if you're a weekly listener, that I took a couple weeks off the podcast to focus on a really exciting and brand new program called Rituals That Replenish. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, but, just wanted to open with that to give you full permission to adjust your schedule as much as you can to respect yourself, respect how much energy you do and do not have, how much capacity you do and do not have, because we can't do it all the time, and that is perfectly okay. And, now that I work for myself, it's strange how much the ideas I, adopted as an employee and also working in corporate America and also even in small businesses that holding myself to this standard that I must always be putting out and, that there's never time for a break. So I took some time off the podcast to focus on creating rituals that replenish. It takes a tremendous amount of time and energy and effort to create a program. Even though this program is smaller than my big one, it still was a lot of work, a labor of love. And then I was starting to feel a little bit fried because I also was trying to find my kids, a school, which I already did, but they were on the wait list. It was a whole thing, but we visited today and they got in the school. So that's a huge weight off my shoulders. I feel super good about it. But yeah, it's just, there's been a lot of stuff going on in my personal life, in my professional life. And I started to feel on edge and I decided to take 2 days off this week. And it was really, really great. And I'm really proud of myself in hindsight that I listened to my body and took the time off before I got sick or got a migraine. Like I felt those symptoms coming on and I went, whoa, pump the brakes, Mia. I just launched Rituals That Replenish a couple days ago. And whenever, you share something you've created with the world, you just want everyone to know about it because you're so excited about it. Sorry for the head scratching noise. My head's itchy all of a sudden. But I just felt like I needed to take some time after producing all of that. So I took some time and I'm back now. And I wanted to ask how you're doing. I know we're not having this conversation live, but genuinely I care about how you're doing right now because as we're approaching the end of the year, I'm thinking about my community. I know a lot of my community members are mothers. And I know that as we reach the end of the year, not only are we back to school, which is a whole shindig in and of itself, but we're nearing the end of the year. And even if you're not a big goal setting, New Year goal setting person, maybe you're just kind of looking back at the year and going, oh, this is not exactly where I wanted to be with this. Or man, I'm really bummed that this really important thing still hasn't happened and we're already near September. The end of the year can be a stressful time and we're also hurling towards the holiday season, which I also feel can be a very stressful and demanding time. So I'm thinking about you and I hope that you're doing okay. And that's also why I created Rituals That Replenish and why I wanted to create this episode today all about how to take breaks when taking breaks feels impossible. Because I have had a lot of hard lessons that have taught me how to do this. And I'm super excited to talk about it with you today and help you to take breaks during a season where you might feel like taking breaks is just impossible. So yeah, let's go ahead and dive into that. But really quickly, I wanted to touch on Rituals That Replenish, which is, in summary, a 3-week program that is designed to be a pause for you to check in with yourself, to learn how to take quality breaks, even when you don't feel like you have time to take that break, and to do it within a community that also has accountability from me, coaching from me, community and connection with other women, and most importantly, live sessions that will be starting on Saturday, September 3rd. So I'm really excited about that. And even if you can't make it live, the replays will be available. You could have access to them for the rest of your life. You can download them to your computer. I'm so pumped to be offering that. But just to provide you with some trauma-informed self-care education, because if taking breaks were as easy as just putting it in your calendar, then we'd all be taking a lot more breaks. Am I right? Like, it's not that simple. And that's why I've created 3 weeks of teaching how to take breaks so that you have this information built into your mind when overwhelm happens, when overcommitment happens, when a lot of things are happening in your personal and professional life, and you have hopefully some of the classes that you've attended in the back of your mind helping you to navigate those times so that you don't burn out and you don't get sick. So I'm really excited because I think it's the perfect time of year for all of us to take a pause, check in with ourselves, get ourselves replenished so that we can show up for the people and things that matter most to us, because in my opinion, that's what real self-care is all about. So if you're interested in learning more about Rituals That Replenish, I'll leave a link in the show notes, in the description, wherever you're watching this. And you can go to miahemstad.com/rituals to learn more. But let's go ahead and dive in. I'm super pumped to talk about this. Where do we begin? So we might begin in an area where you might be like, Mia, what are you talking about? Because when I talk about self-care, I approached it from, first of all, thinking self-care is impossible. This is not accessible to me, to, okay, fine, I need to figure out how to do this, to, oh my gosh, I keep putting it in my calendar and it never happens. What's the problem? What's wrong with me? Why can't I get my ish together? It's in my calendar. There's 5 reminders, 2 alarms. My husband's telling me to go. Like, I remember when I was pregnant with my second child, my son was only like 1.5, almost 2. And my husband was like, okay, you said you were going to go to a coffee shop. It's Sunday. Go to the coffee shop. Go take a break. Laundry's done. Dishes are done. We went to Costco yesterday. Groceries are, stocked. Why are you still here? Because all the other weeks that I didn't take care of myself or didn't take a break, and this was several years ago, y'all. My daughter's almost 4. So 4 years ago, I would be like, oh, well, I need to do the laundry, or, oh, we really should spend today going to the grocery store and stocking up, or, I had something that just felt way more important than my own well-being, right? And then all of a sudden, one weekend, everything that I usually use as an excuse was gone. There were no more excuses. And I still couldn't get myself to leave the house to do the thing that I keep saying I wanted to do, no matter how many times I complained to my husband that I needed a break. And this really made me pause and go, what is going on? Because all this time, I thought I wasn't taking a break because there was this to do and this to do and this to do. But here I was, still at home, feeling literally like there was a physical weight on my chest, keeping me chained to my apartment, like I could not leave. And I remember the first time I actually left on a Saturday morning, and it led to me going to a coffee shop, which is just, I keep using that example, but it's because it's one of the things that really replenishes me. Maybe that's not even for you, but for me, I ended up at a coffee shop one Saturday morning and I'm like, oh my God, this is so nice. I feel so good. And I thought I was going to come home and I was going to have wasted Saturday morning and I'm going to have all these chores to do when I get back home. And I came home and I felt energized and happy. And I was emotionally available. Imagine that, And it's like, it's no shame here at all. Like, we give so much emotionally as mothers that I feel like by the weekend we're just spent and we have nothing left to give. But I came back home after this like impromptu coffee shop date with myself, emotionally available to my kids, to my husband. I wasn't grumpy. I had capacity to do 5 loads of laundry. Like, it was great. And all this time I thought that by taking time away from home, I was going to make it harder on myself to fulfill my responsibilities, when it actually became easier for me to fulfill my responsibilities. And that was when the epiphanies really started. That was when the gears really started to turn in my head. And I was just like, wait, you're telling me that by spending 3 hours out of my home, I actually almost gave myself 3 hours more energy when I came back home? Like, how does that math even math? Like, it didn't make sense. And so, and I say that this was an impromptu coffee date, and I mean it. It was not planned, because every time I planned it, it didn't happen. Remember, I couldn't get myself to leave home. I made excuses, etc. The reason why this happened was because the only eye appointment I was due for an annual eye exam. And the eye doctor I saw at the time actually had Saturday morning appointments, and that was the only time I could get. And so I was forced to leave the house I think I left the house at like 8 a.m. on a Saturday to go to my eye appointment. And so I finished my eye appointment at like 8:45, 9 a.m. And I was like, should I go to the coffee shop? There's really no reason to go home. And of course my mind was like, well, what errands could I run before I go home? And I'm like, Mia, you already ran all the errands this week. There's no excuses. And that's how I took myself to the coffee shop. And that's when I began to really start to dig deep into why the heck is self-care so hard? And if putting it in your schedule was all you needed, then why aren't we all doing this more often? And so that began the 4-year journey of creating this process of understanding your unique situation and how to meet your unique needs with your unique challenges that are getting in the way. Because as hopefully my story just demonstrated, it's not just about time, although that is a big factor, but there can be so many components. And so that's what I'm hoping to scrape the surface of today. And what I'm going to be going into is essentially the curriculum for Rituals That Replenish that I'll be breaking up over the 3 weeks of the program. More in depth there, but I'm giving you like the snapshot version here, and I'm so excited about it. So the first thing that you need to tackle when you're trying to take a break, when you have no time to take a break, is know what your obstacles are. Know what your obstacles are, because it's not always time. And sometimes it is, and you don't even recognize it's that either. And the reason why this is super important is because when we don't know what our obstacles are, we can't effectively problem solve. And if we don't identify the real obstacles to self-care, and when I say obstacles, I'm talking about what's getting in the way of you getting the breaks that you need. Like, what is getting in the way? When we don't figure that out and be honest with ourselves, we tend to create a bunch of shame and blame stories. Right? We start to think, why can't I get my ish together? What's wrong with me? I'm so pathetic. This is ridiculous. The laundry is always like more. I felt enslaved by laundry. Like, I literally couldn't leave the house if the laundry wasn't done. And it's like, that isn't a dumb thing. Like, that's not stupid. And, for me, I realized, and this is the trauma-informed aspect of it, growing up, I wasn't allowed to play with my friends until all the laundry was done. I would spend hours and hours and hours and hours hanging tons of laundry. I am one of 11 kids. I am in the middle. And if you add in my 2 parents, that's 13 people. So imagine hanging laundry for 13 people. And we did not use our dryer in order to save money. And so you can imagine I would be hanging clothes from 8 a.m. to 2, 3, sometimes 4 p.m. So I wasn't dumb for not being able to leave my house to have enjoyment. I was taught my entire life that you are not allowed to rest until the laundry is done, until all the chores are done, until your house is clean. And in particular, this was embedded in me with the laundry because I spent a lot of time as a kid hanging clothes. And so this is the trauma-informed aspect. It's like, what happened in your childhood that has seared a belief into your mind that is now an obstacle that shouldn't be an obstacle because I don't live in that house anymore. I make the rules. I'm an adult. And that empowered belief that I have now of I am the adult, I make the rules, only was able to come forth when I finally acknowledged the obstacle, which was the laundry has a much deeper tie on me than just the present day circumstances. It's because of the years that I had to do laundry before I was allowed to do anything that I wanted to do. And once I became aware of that obstacle, I was able to uproot it. So how can you do this for yourself? There are 3 obstacles to help you break this down and get less overwhelmed, because I know it can be overwhelming to dig into your past. So there's 3 kinds of obstacles. Mental, which has to do with your beliefs. I just described one of them, which was you are not allowed to have fun until you've done all of your chores. That's a belief. That is a belief because it can be changed. That is not fact. That's not truth. That is not universal truth. Those are not the laws of nature. You can decide to have fun before you do any chores. That can be your rule. That can be your empowered stance. That can be the way that you decide to approach life. That's the beautiful thing about being an adult. The other obstacles are emotions, emotional obstacles, and those can be your feelings around taking breaks, like feeling ashamed or feeling guilty for taking a break. I know a lot of people feel guilty for taking a break instead of staying home so that their partner can take the break. You know, if you have kids and you're like, oh, I feel guilty being the first one. Like I remember I would be fine taking a break if I knew my husband was also going to be going out that weekend. But if he wasn't going out to have fun, then I shouldn't do that because I felt guilty just like making sure I had a break, you know, instead of just recognizing that my husband's an adult and that if he can take a break when he's ready and when he wants to, that's his responsibility. And then the other obstacle is situational. And this has to do with tools and resources and support. Like maybe you can't afford childcare and you don't have any supportive family around. Or maybe you don't have enough time because you're under a huge deadline at work. So you're pulling weekends, you know, I've been there before. And those are real obstacles. So just to recap, there's mental obstacles, which have to do with beliefs, emotional obstacles, which have to do with your feelings, guilt and shame, and situational, which has to do with, you know, maybe a lack of tools, a lack of time, a lack of resources, a lack of support. I categorize things. You might have noticed by now, I categorize a lot of things because it helps my brain with the overwhelm. When someone's like, hey, what do you think is going on? Maybe something happened in your childhood. That's like a lot for me. And so when I break it down, it becomes a lot clearer. My brain can kind of categorize like different events in my childhood. And so hopefully that can help you to figure out what your obstacles are and to help you get in touch with the truth of why you're having a hard time taking a break so that you can problem solve some real solutions. So in the example I gave, the solution that I had was recognizing that there was a very traumatic, productivity focused thing that happened in my childhood where I was never allowed to have fun unless I did all this work. And then recognizing and affirming to myself, like creating an affirmation for myself of, I'm an adult now, I make the rules, and I get to have fun when I decide to have fun. And like I said, when I actually affirmations are great, but you have to go out and practice them. So when I finally impromptu went to that coffee shop and came back more emotionally available, more energized, it confirmed to me that when you go and fill your cup up, you've multiplied your energy when you come back home. And then from then on, it was like anytime I felt resistance to self-care, because the resistance is still there sometimes, I recalled that memory of when I went to the coffee shop and came back home feeling empowered, thinking that, oh, now you're going to have less time to do chores. But I actually got my chores done in less time. I got my chores done in less time when I came home that Saturday because I had more energy because I gave to myself first. And so now I'm like, brain, you can't convince me that self-care is a waste of time. Self-care is this incredible, magical investment that gives me back time and energy 3-4 times over. You can't convince me otherwise because I have lived experience. And that's the beauty of taking your affirmations and putting them into practice. So that's the solution for having a negative belief that is unhelpful, that's posing as an obstacle in your life, and changing it to a positive belief that empowers you, that helps you practice self-care, and practicing it, putting it into practice. So hopefully that can help there. The second thing that's super important is setting boundaries that free up time, energy, and space, okay? This is critical. And I know we've all heard about boundaries by this point, or at least I hope you have. It's all about saying no, but I like to go even deeper with, surprise, surprise, more categories. More categories, because again, when someone's like, you need boundaries in your life, I'm like, girl, what are you even talking about? Where do I start? Like, where do I go? Like, what boundaries do I need to set right now that are actually going to help me to take a break and take care of myself right now? Because I'm tired already. And you want me to have a conversation with so-and-so? That's exhausting. So let's get clear on what boundaries you need. There are 3 kinds of boundaries: decrease, delete, and delegate. Decrease, delete, and delegate. And these are super straightforward. Decrease means you're going to do less. Instead of trying to, I used to have this weird rule that didn't like laundry sitting on the couch for more than 2 days. So I forced myself to fold clothes every other day. And now it's I fold clothes once a week, y'all. Decrease, okay? Cooking. I used to cook every single day, and now I batch cook meals, and I make half the meals, but double batch them so that we have food for 2 days instead of just 1. Decrease the cooking, decrease the laundry doing, decrease whatever it is you can decrease. Delete, which is, getting rid of something altogether. It could be a negative relationship. It could be a belief that is so toxic that you need to get rid of it. Like, you need to earn rest. Delete that ish. Let it go. And then delegate, completely hand something over. So in my relationship, my husband and I are married. We are always working on this, but right now he cooks, I would say 80% of our meals. And we share the bathroom responsibilities, like who cleans the shower and things like that. And yeah, just delegate. Why are you doing everything? That's unfair. That should not be the case. And if you don't have a husband or a partner, you're not in that relationship, just try to apply these 3 Ds of boundary setting into your own life. Of course, I can't provide personal one-to-one coaching over a podcast, but hopefully you can apply and brainstorm things from what I'm saying. But decrease, delete, delegate. These are going to help you free up time, energy, and space. Okay. One of the things that I don't like is when people are like, oh, self-care, just put it in your calendar. It's just, it's simple. Just put it in your calendar. Boundaries are a prerequisite to self-care. If you don't have good boundaries, you won't have sustainable self-care. You won't have regular breaks. You won't have a consistent self-care, because eventually that schedule that is over full and the demands that are so much on you are going to end up taking precedence. So boundaries must come before any sustainable self-care practice can happen. So y'all see what I'm saying? It's I'm a self-care coach, but people are always surprised when the first 5 lessons in my program are not even about self-care practices. Let's talk about journaling and meditation. It's those are beautiful, but unless I have helped you understand your obstacles and set your boundaries and figure out what those even are, you're not going to be able to, I'm going to be setting you up for failure. You're not going to be able to stick with your self-care. And then you're going to think it's your fault, that you just aren't managing your time good enough, that you just don't, follow your schedule when your calendar reminds you that self-care is coming up. It's just your fault. No, girl, it's not your fault. We need to figure out those obstacles. We need to rewire some of those beliefs. We need to start practicing new beliefs, and we need to set those boundaries, because I guarantee you, you don't have the time and energy and space you need, and we need to work on freeing that up. So that's number 2. And that's another piece that we're going to be doing in Rituals That Replenish. There's going to be journal prompts specifically for obstacles so that you can brainstorm those. Boundary setting so that you can brainstorm the boundaries you need right now. Because I guarantee you, all of us have boundaries we could set that we just don't need to do right now in order to take a break. You know what I'm saying? We will all always need to be setting more boundaries, but I want you to get clear over the next 3 weeks, if you join Rituals That Replenish, what boundaries do you actually need right now? Again, because we all have limited resources, limited capacity, and we need to focus with focus on what we have. Now, the next thing in this process is finally identify 1 to 2 types of self-care that you're going to practice and set those intentions. What are the 1 to 2 types of self-care you need the most right now? Okay, the most. 1 to 2. Not make a list of every single self-care you want and need in your life, but seriously just 1 to 2. We don't want to feed overwhelm. We are trying to replenish ourselves. We are trying to ground ourselves and recenter ourselves, not overwhelm ourselves. And this is where the 4B framework comes in handy. Yes, another categorization. Another categorization. So I talked about this in depth in episode 2, but if you would rather just kind of read through it, I made a gorgeous PDF. It's a little ebook that you can get for free. Go to miahemstad.com/course. I call it my mini course, but you can get it in audio or ebook format. But I basically dive into the 4Bs of self-care. So these are basic, boring, brilliant, and bougie self-care. And I love this because it makes sure that I don't, lean too far in one direction or the other when it comes to self-care, but that I'm really looking at my needs and my desires from a holistic standpoint. So basic self-care includes sleep, eating well, movement, hygiene, and hydration. Boring self-care is doing the tasks that you're avoiding. It could be boundary setting. It could be decluttering. It could be budgeting. Brilliant self-care is doing what feeds your soul and your creativity. It could be connecting with a friend, taking a class, reading a fun novel, just for the fun of it. And then bougie self-care, which is doing luxurious feeling activities. And I say luxurious feeling activities because it needs to feel luxurious to you. It doesn't need to be something that everybody else is doing on Instagram. It needs to feel personal and luxurious to you. For me, that was buying a really nice candle from the Chip and Joanna Gaines section at Target. For you, it might be getting a massage, like whatever works with what you have access to, right? So identify from those 4 types of self-care I just talked about. Identify the 1 to 2 kinds of self-care you need the most right now. And if you want a printable that you can use to brainstorm the self-care that you need and kind of write it in those different categories, that is available in the ebook I just talked about. And there will be a link in the description for you to check out if you want to download that for free. And then the next step in this process is set your intentions in writing, okay? Set them in writing. I know that sounds so lame and so boring and we want to just put it in our minds, but there's probably, I'm guessing, a lot of things in your mind like there is in mine. And there was a study done at, I think it's called Dominican University in California. I think it was done in 2018. Anyway, they did a study and they proved that you are 42% more likely to achieve your goals when you write them down. And I think this is just me going off of this. I think it's because we are creatures of habit. We operate, I think it's 92%, in our subconscious mind. We're not conscious and aware of what we're doing most of the time in the day. So the more you can just make your goals and intentions more obvious, you've written them on a Post-it, you've written it on your mirror, it's the background of your phone, whatever you need to do to make drink more water, Mia, go to bed at 9:30 or get ready for bed at 9:30. Whatever you can do to make your new self-care intentions obvious and easy for your brain to see, it just helps you to latch onto it better and actually make it happen. Your brain is better able to work for you and create solutions for how you can make that early bedtime happen or how you can get in that amount of water you want to drink per day happen when it's in front of you. If you just tell yourself, yeah, I really want to drink more water today, it's just, you're not as likely to make it happen as shown by the study. You're 42% more likely to achieve your goals and intentions when you write them down. So write down your intentions, and not just for self-care, by the way. Also write down your boundary setting intentions. If you need to decrease, delete, or delegate something, I want you to write that down too, because you are way more likely to do it if you write it down. And this is something that my clients are seeing in No Longer Last. Every month, we write down not only our self-care intentions, but the boundary setting intentions. And it usually brings up a lot for people because then they have to really think about how am I going to set this boundary, because those are usually a little bit tougher. But again, if you don't set those boundaries, it's so much harder to practice self-care consistently and sustainably. So it makes sense that those are a little bit more challenging, but it's worth it. It's worth it to write it down and to allow your brain to help you solve the problem. And then the last step in this process is get accountability and support. if you have a friend who's like on the same page as you, as like, hey girl, we need to take a break. I need to make sure I'm tending to myself because the new school year is kicking my butt. Work stuff is kicking my butt. The holiday season is coming. I need to make sure I don't burn out and get sick. Find a friend who shares those goals, because they're going to be able to support you and holding you accountable and encouraging you when it gets tough and you feel resistance and you just feel like you really just don't have time for self-care. Those people are just so important in your life and in this process of finding a way to take a break when you feel like you have no time to take a break. There was a really cool study that I found that was published in the Journal of Applied Psychology back in 2020. And I'm going to link this study in the description. And this study showed that by sharing your goals or intentions with someone that you admire or someone that you look up to can significantly increase your chances of following through on them. And I don't know, I've experienced this personally. I remember I used to see a therapist who was very accountability oriented, and she would end each session with me having to set an intention. And then I would have to come back the next week and we would start the session with me sharing how did it go? And some weeks I didn't do the thing I said I was going to do. And it was still a really important learning opportunity. The weeks that I, of course, accomplished what I said I was going to do felt great, but the weeks that I didn't, it always ended up unearthing more obstacles, more childhood trauma that needed unpacking. So, it's not about being perfect. It's not about winning. There's no competition here. And that's what I want to make clear. Having accountability and support is just about helping you in this journey of getting to know yourself and of taking care of yourself. And I just I'm bummed that a lot of goal setting and intention setting is just really tangled up in hustle culture and productivity culture and perfectionism and competitiveness. And I just really want to help my community detangle self-care from that and detangle intention setting from that, because it really is just a process of getting to know yourself, and it's a process of learning to love and care for yourself. And it can be so healing and so self-esteem boosting. When you go through this process and you realize that you can figure out how to have your back and how to take care of yourself, especially during times of real busyness, you can just feel really unstoppable, truly unstoppable. Because we all know that when we don't take care of ourselves, nature forces us to take that break anyway, and it's usually at a very inconvenient time. And I'm speaking from personal experience with a number of times I kept pushing off and pushing off and pushing off breaks and self-care, and then I end up with debilitating migraines for 4 days and needing to find last minute childcare because now I can't take care of my kids, or just getting sick out of nowhere or burned out and not wanting to work and feeling completely unmotivated and uninspired. And it's that sucks. Let's not have that happen if we can help it. And so, that's kind of what I really want to help women do. And that's why I designed Rituals That Replenish, because I think that self-care, boundary setting, unpacking childhood trauma, it's a process. It's not something that I could just give you in a printable. And that's really why I wanted to bring this program to people over 3 weeks and to give people time to journal. There's going to be a group journaling aspect to the live sessions, and journal prompts will be posted in the private community. So if you want to just journal on your lunch break and, you don't have time to attend the live sessions, that's okay. There's going to be coaching and access to me for those 3 weeks, and self-care education, like I said, because there's just really a gross oversimplification sometimes. And I don't mean this, social media can only do so much for us in a meme or a quote. And I really just think if you want to go deeper and you want to kind of get to the bottom of why it's so hard for you to take breaks and why you kind of always find yourself just in this cycle of burnout, which I just am very familiar with that cycle. And I just want to help as many women as possible escape that cycle, because once you figure out how to escape that cycle, it's just really empowering. And I want to help as many women as possible do that. So, so that's my last tip though. Get accountability and support. wherever you can find it. And if you don't have a friend that can help you, or if you want to have somebody support you, I am here to support you with that. A big component of my program, Rituals That Replenish, and also the No Longer Last journey, is accountability. It's funny, when I was in high school, I was a tutor for a lot of different people. I was always tutoring someone in something, and I realized I've always had this natural gift of holding people accountable to their goals and helping to support people through like whatever they're doing. And it's just hilarious now that I do the same thing, but just in a different setting. But that's the episode. And thank you so much for listening. I hope you found it helpful. Whether or not you join Rituals That Replenish, I think that you'll be able to apply what I've shared here. And but if you do decide to join, remember the link is in the description. We start on September 3rd. And if you can't start with us, again, there's access to the live recordings, like lifetime access. So if you get in, you'll still get access to all the content, which I'm really pumped about. Alrighty, I will see you next time I upload to the podcast, and I hope to see you inside Rituals That Replenish. It's going to be really exciting and really relaxing. All right, y'all, take good care, and I'll see you next time. Bye.